The Grinnell Glacier Trail is my favorite trail in the park. It's about 11 miles from the trailhead, but you can take about 3 miles off if you take the boat. It'll take you across one lake, and after a short portage to another where there's a great photo op. It'll then take you to the end of that lake, as the main trail hugs the shore. But you need to be bear safe because where there are berries, there may be bears. Yes, there's a lot of up. It's a long slog up the hill, but it's not terribly steep, and there's only one switchback. There's great photo ops at the cliff face. This is where the views start to get really good. And if you're an Earth history buff, in places you're walking on an ancient seafloor that's now 6,000 feet up in the air. There's even a rest spot, because the last climb is the steepest. This is the fantastic view at the top. It's the only trail that gives easy access to one of the remaining glaciers. The Iceberg Lake Trail, it's one of the most popular in the park. The shared trailhead is behind the Swift Current Motor Inn. It starts with a brief climb to a through trail that is also popular with bears. Their activity often closes the trail, like it did the day after I did this hike. When out of the trees, there's nice views of the valley. And yes, it is important to know scatology. This is bear scat. Luckily, it's kind of old. Then there's a nice walk through the trees. Ptarmigan Falls is at about halfway. It's a good spot for a snack. Then you walk past the spur to Ptarmigan Tunnel, and in this section it's when you start to feel the 1,200-foot climb. It's gradual, but noticeable here. Then we're out of the trees, and we see the beauty of the valley, all the way down to the lake, which is surrounded by 3,000-foot cliffs. There are many trailheads along the Going to the Sun Road. From Saya Bend, you can head up to Piegan Pass or to Saya Pass, and I think I'm pronouncing that wrong. Piegan Pass is a 9.2-mile round trip from the Sun Road, with over 1,700 feet of elevation gain. You can also get there from Many Glacier, where it's about a 12.4-mile round trip. It's just about as far to Saya Pass, but there's about 300 additional feet of elevation gain. Much of the trail and the elevation gain occurs when you're in the trees. The trees are thick, but there are a few views of the mountains, and you never know who you're going to have to share the trail with. There's a couple of creeks to cross, too. A little bit past the halfway point, there's another trail. Saya Pass is to the right. It's closer, but it has 300 feet more of elevation gain. And that's why I decided to go to Piegan Pass. Should have realized I made the wrong choice when I saw fresh bear scat a few minutes later. But beyond that was what turned out to be my favorite part of the trail. This long Scree slope had more than just a great view of Jackson Glacier across the valley. The trail seemed to go on forever, with no reference points. But this weirdness and overcoming it made it my favorite part of the trail. A couple of 100 feet after the slope, you reach the pass. There's a nice little blue lake, but not much else. I thought about summiting, but it's a lot farther than it looks. After some gorp and some water, I headed back to the car at Saya Bend. I was feeling pretty good, and had I known what you now know, I likely would have gone to Saya Pass too. It has a much better view. And from a nearby summit, there's a great view of Cracker Lake in Many Glacier. And by the way, when you're at Sunrift Gorge, you'll see a sign to Saya Pass. This is the hard way. It has lots of switchbacks and over 3,000 feet of elevation gain. But many go this way and make it a 10-mile point-to-point trip to Saya Bend. Great trails don't have to have a lot of up. It starts by the Swift Current Motor Inn parking lot. A side trail leads to Fisher Cap Lake, where moose love to feed. They're there almost every night. A mile or so later, you get to Red Rock Falls, which is a great place to explore for kids and adults, especially on a hot day. Then the forest thins out a bit, providing great views of the surrounding mountains. And these mountains were all carved by glaciers. But there are other forces at work too. In places you can see how the rock folded during the mountain building process. Our third lake is Bullhead Lake. It's an amazing place where you're completely surrounded by nature. And it's nearly 3,000-foot cliffs. You can turn around here for an easy 8-mile round trip. But if you're up to it, you can climb 2,400 feet to the pass, where there's an amazing view of the valley below, and have a little snack at Granite Park, which lies beyond. Logan Pass is in the center of Glacier National Park. It's in the shadow of what's left of a peak that was sheared off by one of the park's namesake glaciers. Often the parking lot fills up by 7 a.m., but if you're lucky enough to get a spot, or if you take a red bus or a hiker shuttle to get here, you should take the Highline Trail. Its several destinations are covered in my other park guides. In this little teaser, we're just going to go to Granite Park and down to the loop on the Going to the Sun Road. The trail starts by going down and around to a path carved into the garden wall. There are sheer cliffs up and sheer ones down. It's so narrow that it's difficult to pass in opposite directions, and because of this, the park is considering making it a one-way trail, which is too bad for a lot of folks who just want to spend an hour or two going out to what I call my lunch spot. The cliff face isn't very long, and most people won't be scared. There is a handy garden hose to hang on to until they take it away in October. After that, the trail just weaves in and out of the contours of the garden wall, with great views back to Logan Pass and across the valley. This next little cliff face is what I call my lunch spot. It takes only about an hour to get here, and if you just want to do an out and back, this is a great place to turn around. You never know who you're going to meet while you're admiring the view of the haystack before heading back to Logan. I've had good luck spotting wildlife around here. I've also seen bighorn, and even a grizzly and her 2 cubs, who were thankfully quite a ways away. The switch back up the haystack is the only noticeable incline, and after this little pass, the trail once again meanders along the garden wall with great views all along the way. 5 or 6 miles out, after the last corner, you get your first look at Granite Park. And just before the last slope, there's another trail. This one goes to the Grinnell Glacier overlook. It's only 5/8 of a mile long, but it goes up 1,000 feet. I've only done it once, and it was tough. But there's a great view of Grinnell Glacier in the valley beyond. I did it late in the year when most of the bergs had melted. Posing is about all that I had energy for. Granite Park is 7.6 miles from Logan Pass, but I also had to go up to the overlook, which added 1.25 miles, so it was time for a rest. Granite Park is a collection of buildings that include the improperly named chalet with its rustic accommodations. You have to bring your own bedding and food, but the night sky is amazing, and reservations are incredibly hard to come by. There's also a store, and I was able to buy food and water as long as I packed it out. If you're in better shape than me, you might want to hike the 1 mile-ish up to Swift Current Lookout. Its many switchbacks rise 1,200 feet to a fire lookout building with one of the best views in the park. But that's not for me. I opted for a quiet table with a view before I headed down 4.2 miles to the loop. The trail drops 2,400 feet. Going down can be harder on the knees than going up. Hiking poles really help, but I didn't have any when I did the loop. Fairly recent fires means there's little shade on most of the trail, which is pretty steep all the way down to the Going to the Sun Road. And it was from there that I caught a hiker shuttle back to Logan Pass in my vehicle. The Highline Trail and any of its versions made my list of the 3 best trails in Glacier. But this trail, like much of the park, is being loved to death. Overcrowding may force it to be a one-way trail, so in the future, 2-hour jaunts out to my lunch spot may no longer be possible. So we're all going to have to get in shape to do the long ones.